watching this morning and to everyone in our community. And this is a day of celebration. We are celebrating women and celebrating mothers and mothering today. So we welcome you. And we welcome you this morning to our virtual online Unity community as we continue to navigate this challenging different time together. But we know and give thanks that that spiritual connection that we have is always there. Even if we are not physically together, if we are in separate rooms or separate homes or even separate cities, that connection that we have is still there, and we are grateful for that. I'm Reverend Michelle Jelinch, and I'm here this morning with our Essential Sunday Service team, our music director Denise Headland, with Richard Conklin on drums, council co-chair and platform Robin Falkenberg doing a little bit of everything this morning. We have Keith Larson and Larry Sanks on the soundboard and helping us out with various things, logistics and such. And so we are just grateful. We are here socially distancing properly and all of that, but we are so grateful to be able to be here this morning and bring this service to you. Unity of Monterey Bay is an inclusive spiritual community, honoring the God of each of our understanding and recognizing the innate good and divine essence within every individual. Will you please join me now in our statement of faith?
There is only one presence and one power in the universe, God the Good, expressing as infinite God beyond us, intimate God beside us, inner God being us, divine love in action.
And so it is. So let's begin this Mother's Day Sunday with a moment of prayer. And this morning we are holding all the mothers in our community and in around the world in our hearts and honoring the work that mothers do. And so this morning we acknowledge that feminine aspect of the divine as well, and we celebrate and appreciate that divine feminine that is within each and every one of us. That which births, that which nurtures, that which brings forth, that which uplifts and which loves. And so this morning we pray for our mothers who cared for us when we were helpless, who comforted us when we were hurt, whose love and care we maybe took for granted. Today we also hold in our hearts all the different kinds of mothers and different kinds of mothering that exist. For new mothers, coming to terms with new responsibility. For expectant mothers, wondering and waiting. For those who are tired, stressed, or depressed. For those who struggle to balance the tasks of work and family. For those who are unable to feed their children due to poverty. For those whose children have physical, mental, or emotional disabilities. For those who have children they do not want. For those who raise children on their own. For those who have lost a child. For those who care for the children of others. For those whose children have left home. And for those whose desire to be a mother has not been fulfilled. Today we also pray for those who are grieving the loss of their mother. Those who never knew their biological mother and now yearn for her. Those who have experienced the wonder of an adopted mother's love. The families separated by war or conflict. Spirit, Mother, Father, God, give them special comfort and uplift them. This morning we honor and bless all mothers, those who celebrate today and those for whom today is a reminder of sadness or grief. Mostly, we remember that feminine aspect of God and that divine feminine within, and we give thanks for its steadfast, nurturing, sustaining, loving presence. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.
Now, will you please join me in our spring quarter affirmation? And I'll just have you repeat after me. My heart knows well-being.
My heart knows well-being.
No matter the circumstances.
No matter the circumstances.
Releasing all fear.
Releasing all fear.
I rise.
I rise.
Well, this is the time in our service when we bless our children, and so let's just take a moment to hold all of the children, those in our families, our neighbors, friends, those all around the world, and our own inner children, holding those blessed ones in our hearts. And please join me in our heartfelt blessing. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, just the way you are. Our elder keeper of the wisdom of this community, James Bogan, for bringing us some beautiful carnations, which he has done every year for as long as I've been coming here, which is 24 or 5 years or something. So I was thinking this year would be the first year we wouldn't get James's flowers, and here they are, like a little angel. He brought them. And also Keith Larson, who also, I don't know if you can see them, but brought us some lovely flowers here this morning as well. So we're grateful. So for announcements this morning, I'm just going to refer you to our weekly shout out. And just as always, keep your eye on that space because we are sending updates and stuff and such throughout the week. So keep an eye on your email. And so now, we're going to shift a little bit. So let's just begin to take some deep breaths and get centered. And we're going to take a moment to now bring that attention from that outer celebration to that inner blissful connection with Spirit. And so taking now a deep breath in and letting it out with an audible sigh. We allow all distractions to gently fade away as we invite the chime to call us into the sacred space within. We ring the chime 4 times to call in the 4 directions and to remind us of our interconnection with all of creation and with the sacred circle of life. As we feel it resonating through our very being, we follow its call into the now present moment within. Continuing to focus on our breath, with each inhale, we open our hearts and minds. We envision our breath reaching every cell of our being. And with each exhale, we see all barriers and obstacles dissolving into the divine flow. And again, as we inhale, we expand the spaciousness within us. We move beyond the limitations and boundaries of our bodies. And as we exhale, we ground ourselves deep within Mother Earth and into our oneness with the universe. And now finally, we breathe our awareness into the highest expression of love, light, joy, and peace we can imagine, as we experience a transforming wave of gratitude, and with a fullness of heart, we say yes to it all, embracing, claiming, and knowing the divine Christ Spirit expressing in, through, and as us. And with a final exhale, we say, thank you, God. Now fully centered and transformed by the power of Spirit, we enter into our lesson and meditation time with today's daily word.
And the word is Mother's blessing. I invite you to allow my words to be your words. I honor all mothers and am grateful for their love. I bless my mother and am grateful to her for the gift of nurturing love. Whether my mother is still with me or has passed on, Her love still lives in my heart, and her wisdom continues to inspire me. I am grateful for the many ways my mother has blessed me. I also feel deep appreciation and tender affection for all those who have blessed me with the selfless gift of motherly love. I would not be who I am today without them. Through the living example of the mothers in my life, I pass along the blessings of a mother's care and devotion as I embrace opportunities to share an affirming thought, an encouraging word, a smile, or a simple act of kindness. I honor my mother and all mothers as I share the love of God that never fails. And from the scriptures, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. From Proverbs chapter 31, verse 26.
I would just like to thank Lois Hendrickson and Liddingale Music for their permission to use that song.
Thank you. In witness to the wisdom, to the many paths, to the sacred, we read from 3 sacred traditions on this morning's topic, motherly love. From Taoism, attain utmost vacuity, hold fast to quietude, while the myriad things are stirring together, I see only their return. For luxuriantly as they grow, each of them will return to its root. To return to the root is called quietude, which is also said to be reversion to one's destiny. The reversion belongs with the eternal. To know the eternal is enlightenment. That's from the Tao Te Ching. From Hinduism, when all the senses are stilled, when the mind is at rest, when the intellect wavers not, then, say the wise, is reached the highest state. This calm of the senses and the mind has been defined as yoga. He who attains it is free from delusion. From Katha Upanishad. From Christianity. Now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village, where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by the many tasks, so she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. That's from Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42.
Where I am and where I'd like to be.
stream. I know all of you at home are extremely grateful for the music portion of our service that really uplifts all of us and makes it feel so much more like we are all still together, even though we're not here physically. So thank you. Also for the music, we're trying to continue to thank the artists that have so graciously allowed us to use their music for live streaming during this time. So I want to thank Empower Music and that beautiful song Here and Now by Janice Stanfield and Paul Dolmer. Also want to say Happy Mother's Day to Vicki, our beloved Reverend Vicky, our senior minister. We know you're watching us and we love you. Mwah. Happy Mother's Day, and hope you have a wonderful, well-deserved, restful day today. So, here we are in, I believe, week 9. If I tried to count, I was like, how many weeks we've been doing this? I believe it's around week 9 of this quarantining or sheltering in place. And I'm a bit of an armchair anthropologist, and so I've been sort of noticing that there appear to be two different kinds of people in two different kinds of, let's say, shelterers or quarantiners. I think you know what I'm talking about. So on the one hand, there are those who are remodeling their bathrooms, sewing face masks for everyone they know. Is that Robin? Making their own sourdough bread starter, right? Cleaning out their closets, organizing their junk drawers. So that's the one kind of person. And then there's the other kind of person, like moi, who's not getting a whole heck of a lot done except kind of the absolutely necessary things. And I don't know about you, but I don't know where the past 9 weeks have gone, but they seem to have just flown by, and I haven't gotten much done. Early on in this sheltering in place time, I saw a meme going around Facebook, a meme just being a graphic that circulates on social media. And it said, I saw it a lot, you all have probably seen it too, and it said something like this: if you don't come out of this quarantine with either 1, a new skill, 2, starting what you've been putting off, like a new business, and 3, more knowledge, you didn't ever lack the time, you lacked the discipline. Have y'all seen this meme going around? Yikes. If that meme isn't the perfect example of our out-of-control, achievement-driven, productivity-obsessed culture, I don't know what is. In fact, we have come to value industriousness, right, getting stuff done, so much that we expect people to be accomplishing all kinds of things while sheltering in place during a frightening global pandemic. I don't like to celebrity bash because I'm a bit of a celebrity junkie myself, but Gwyneth Paltrow, I'm calling you out, girl, because she posted that during this time we should write a book, learn an instrument or a language, or learn to code online, draw, or paint. Thank you, Gwynnie. This is a very privileged statement, okay, because not all of us have the financial ability or, the logistical ability or even the mental or emotional fortitude to do that kind of thing. There are some folks that don't have a choice, that don't have the economic ability to engage in home improvement projects, right? There are those who are struggling with issues like childcare, struggling with their own mental health issues that have been exacerbated by this situation. Many, many, many folks around the country and around the world who are struggling with reduced work hours or having lost their job and the resulting financial issues, having bills to pay, many folks who are just trying to stay above water. And so I started thinking a lot about that meme that I saw going around and lots of people reposting it, and I'm not trying to shame anyone if you were one of those who reposted it, but I started thinking about what that meme said about our culture. And obviously it bothered me, and I started to try to post things that refuted it. I started posting lots of articles. I saw a lot of articles coming out saying why that meme and that idea, that pressure to achieve and be productive during this time, why that is so psychologically damaging for so many of us. Now, I also started noticing new memes that came out to sort of combat or refute that one. I saw one that said, it had the same meme, but then it had it like corrected, crossed out. It said, if you aren't doing X, Y, and Z, you are doing just fine. We are going through a collective traumatic experience. Not everyone has the privilege of turning a pandemic into something fun or productive. And so I reposted that one. And I started to see lots of posts and articles urging us to prioritize our own and others' mental health and well-being over this idea that we should be writing the great American novel while we are sheltering in place. And I began to tell those around me and those in our congregation that it's okay if you're not the one doing all of those things. It's okay if that's not how you're spending your sheltering in place time. Incidentally, I also saw some funny memes. God bless the people who post funny things on social media, because that stuff, keeps me going. So I saw one that said, starting out the same way, if you don't come out of this quarantine with 1, a sourdough starter, 2, a cool Zoom background, am I right? 3, day pajamas and night pajamas. You didn't lack the time, you only lacked the discipline. And so I always appreciate that creativity and that use of humor to combat that shaming, that pervasive shaming that seems to have really become part of our social media culture. So which kind of quarantiner are you? Sourdough starter, daytime, nighttime pajamas. And how is this quarantine going for you? How have you been spending your time? I want to tell you that however you have been spending your time during this sheltering in place, it is just fine. If you have knitted 8 blankets and alphabetized your CDs, you go. That's awesome, especially if that's what you love to do and that brings you comfort. But if you've worn a huge dent in your sofa, that's okay too. That's okay too. It's really important during this time that we realize and we remember that everyone is different. Everyone brings to the table different challenges and comes from a different starting place. And we all have a different way of reacting and responding to what is happening. So let's stop the shaming. Well, today is Mother's Day. I don't know, I was looking back, it seems like I'm always speaking on Mother's Day, so that's awesome. I'm happy to do that. And I'd like to try to use a female, woman-centered topic or Bible story on Mother's Day. And so today we're going to look at one of the most well-known female-centered Bible stories, which occurs in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. And it's the story of Mary and Martha. It's one of my favorites. And we heard it in the scripture reading, but I'm going to recap. So this story takes place near the end of Jesus' ministry. And Jesus and the disciples are traveling from town to town, preaching and performing healings. And when they would do that, they would often be taken into the homes of supporters, people who wanted to support the cause, and they would be fed and offered hospitality. And so in this story, Jesus and the disciples enter a particular village, and they are welcomed into the home of Martha. And the story tells us that Martha had a sister, Mary. Now, this is not Mary Magdalene. Just want to clarify that. Lots of Marys in the Bible. So Mary sits at the Lord's feet, and she's listening to him. So we could kind of infer from that the disciples were also there, because that was kind of Jesus' entourage. And so she was sitting there with the disciples listening to his teachings, but she was sitting at his feet. Now Martha was distracted by many tasks. We can sort of imagine her bustling around, right? Trying to be of service and provide that hospitality. So as she's doing this, she gets a little irritated, and she comes to Jesus and says, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her! Tell her to help me." And then Jesus, gotta love him, Martha, Martha, right? You can just imagine him going, oy vey, Martha. You are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. As with all Bible stories, there are many different ways of interpreting this. And scholars, have different opinions about what things mean. And it turns out that this story in particular has been the focus of a lot of feminist scholarship because it's got these two different versions of what the role of women is supposed to be. And so many scholars and folks over the years have tried to discern what this passage was saying about the roles of women. And of course, like we often do, people use it to reinforce or to prove their side, right? So if you want to prove that women should be serving people, then you kind of, you say, well, look at Martha. If you want to prove that women should be included in spiritual work, then you look at Mary. But it's important, and we also try to discern from it what Jesus thought about the role of women. Now that takes a bit of a leap, okay, but that's what people do. So it's also important for us to remember that during this time, in the first century, it would have been quite unusual for Mary, a woman, to be sitting at a rabbi's feet. Now remember, they called Jesus rabbi, which just meant teacher. And so this was a role that was usually reserved for men. And so it's quite significant that Mary is included in this and that she is sitting at Jesus' feet. And it certainly seems to indicate that Jesus accepted women as disciples and that he gave them his teachings along with his male disciples. So this is an important thing that we can glean from this text. But there's another meaning that I'm more interested in today. You may remember from my past sermons, I've talked a lot about how Unity interprets the Bible and the different approaches that we use. And one of them is called maieutic interpretation. Maieutic is just a fancy word that basically means we find ourselves in the story. Okay, we try to relate to the story in some personal way. Our co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, taught that every person, place, and event in the story represented an aspect of consciousness. And of course, when we're bringing our own interpretation, it represents an aspect of our own consciousness. And so, can we find ourselves in this story of Mary and Martha? Ask yourself, who am I like in this story? Where do I see myself reflected? In this case, Mary and Martha represent two different aspects of consciousness, or two pretty different ways of being. And you may find that you are predominantly more Martha, or you are predominantly more Mary, or you may be some combination of both, or you may be different ones at different times. So let's look at Martha. Martha is a doer. Okay, she's busy, she's productive, she's taking care of business, right? Martha is the consummate hostess. You can just see her bustling around, serving Jesus and the disciples. And she probably represents a traditional role of women at that time. She is in service to Jesus. She's serving Jesus by tidying up the house and by preparing a meal for him and the disciples and by offering this hospitality. So she's serving in a very active way. Martha's also irritated, of course, that her sister is not also participating in this more traditional role of women. And she feels that Mary should also be doing this, should also be serving as hostess and offering hospitality to their guests, as was expected in that time. So metaphysically, Martha represents the busyness of our minds, that our ego, material selves, that preoccupation that it has with doing, right? That thinking, doing. Our preoccupation with achievement, that comes from the ego self, with accomplishing many things, can also represent, our distraction with worldly concerns. We keep getting distracted by these worldly material concerns. However, as I mentioned, she also represents service. So she is in service to the Lord, which metaphysically represents being in service to our spiritual self, okay? But in an active way. So Martha is in service to her spiritual self. Now Mary, on the other hand, is calm and still. She's listening. So Martha represents doing, Mary represents being. Okay, she's more passive, more receptive. Metaphysically, Mary represents that quietness of spirit, that stillness or calmness of our Christ nature. She's also in service to the Lord, but in a different way, in a more passive, receptive way. She's sitting quietly at the Lord's feet. And so, metaphysically, this represents being present to our Christ nature, to our spiritual selves, receptive to divine ideas, just as Mary was receptive to Jesus' teachings. Sitting at someone's feet is a sign of respect, and so that posture represents respect for the presence of God, respect or reverence for our spiritual selves. Mary also, at least for me, symbolizes prioritizing our spiritual practice. The role of Mary in this story reminds us of the importance of the time that we spend in the presence of the Lord, in the presence of God. That sitting at the feet of the Lord quietly. But how does Jesus respond to the two women in this story? And what does Jesus seem to be saying about these two different ways of being, doing and being? So it's important to note that Jesus does not rebuke Martha, right? He's not telling her, he doesn't chastise her. He's not telling her that what she's doing is wrong. He just says, Martha, Martha. I like that part. You are busy and distracted by many things. He's just kind of pointing it out to her. He may be encouraging Martha to ask herself, is running around doing all this really how you want to spend your time right now? So the backstory, it's important to note that at this time, Jesus was nearing the end of his ministry and, as we know, the end of his life. And so he knew, at least on some level, that his time with the disciples was coming to an end, that he was not going to be around much longer. And so he may be saying, both to Martha and to us, there's a time for doing and getting things done and being of service, and these things are important, but they are not all there is. Mary sitting quietly at the Lord's feet, she's being present with her beloved teacher. She's listening to him and learning from him. She's simply taking advantage of the time that she has with Jesus and being in his presence. So despite Martha's protestation that her sister is not helping her, Jesus doesn't rebuke her, but he says to her, there's need of only one thing. There's need of only one thing. He seems to be saying that our spiritual practice, our time spent in the presence of God, is the most important thing. Then he goes on to say, Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken from her. What Mary has experienced sitting at the Lord's feet cannot be taken from her. The housework will get done. The remodeling projects will get done. But the time that we have to spend together will not last forever. Just as Jesus knew that the time he had with his disciples was coming to an end. And the time that we spend with one another cannot be taken from us. In fact, when we leave this human experience, the only thing that we can take with us, the only thing that cannot be taken from us, is our spiritual growth, the expansion of our consciousness. That's it. We don't get to take anything else. We don't get to take our material belongings and such. And so Jesus says there is need of only one thing. So as you continue to reflect on yourself during this sheltering in place time, are you Martha, doing many things? And that's okay if you are. Busying yourself with service to others. I've received face masks from like 4 different people. God bless them. I'm grateful for those people who have sewing machines and do domestic things, which I don't do, but I'm grateful for that. So are you that person helping, doing lots of things? Or are you Mary? Are you finding that you're spending more time in stillness, in the quiet? Are you enjoying this opportunity for solitude, for time in your spiritual practice, in contemplation, in reflection? Or maybe, like I think I am myself, you are some of both. You're doing some of both. So it's important to note, in my opinion, this story is not saying that one is right and the other is wrong. In fact, it may be pointing to a balance of being and doing in our lives. But let's face it, which way do we tend to err? I mean, do we err on the side of sitting quietly at home all the time? No, we err on the side of doing, right? We're doers. That's our culture. Our culture, like that meme I mentioned at the beginning, tells us that we should be productive all the time. Even when we are in the midst of a global crisis, we need to be productive. And so we tend to err on that side of doing, and that's why we need this reminder. And so this story is simply reminding us that our spiritual practice needs to take top priority in our life. All the time, but especially during this time of sheltering in place. Our spiritual practice is more important than getting dishes done, more important than completing projects and knitting blankets. Our time spent in the presence of God is the most important thing. And this story for me is also about being present. Like Mary was present. She was sitting, being. And so this story is a reminder for us to be present to others, to God, to ourselves. It's more important for us to be present with our loved ones during the time that we have and focus on things that last, those things that will not be taken from us, those things that have meaning. I'm pretty sure on our deathbed, we aren't going to be wishing we had spent more time cleaning. Rather, we may wish that we had spent more time with our loved ones, being present to them. And so this coming week, as you continue with, your quarantine activities, I invite you to just ask yourself, am I busy and distracted by material things, by doing? Am I prioritizing my spiritual practice? Can I do some of both? Can I bring some balance to my sheltering in place time? Can I make time for both of those? Can I be in service to others and help others, but also make time for quiet, for time spent in contemplation? And I believe, most importantly, can I be more present? Can I be more present for my family, for my partner, for my children, for my neighbors, for myself? So it's true what we hear. You hear a lot. This quarantine situation, this time of sheltering in place is an opportunity we may never get again, right? But an opportunity for what? To learn a language? To write a book? To remodel our bathroom? Now, it may be, if that's what you enjoy doing, and feel free to come and remodel my bathroom while you're at it, because that's not happening in Casa Jelinch, I'm telling you right now. So if that's what you enjoy doing, have at it. But it is also an opportunity that we may not ever get again to stop and be present. Be present for our families, for our children, for our pets. That dog that keeps putting his paw on you, or the cat that keeps knocking you in the face. To stop. And this goes for me too. I'm as guilty of it as anyone else. To stop and be present. And spend time with our loved ones, even if it's over Zoom, with our cool new Zoom background, or Skype, or whatever it is. It's an opportunity for us to spend time sitting at the feet of the Lord, prioritizing our spiritual practice. And so there is a time to do work and a time to be still. But as Jesus tells Martha, there is need of only one thing. Our mental health, our spiritual wellness, our connection with God, with Spirit, with our own inner divinity, with ourselves, is the only thing that is truly needed. The rest can wait. to practice what we've just been talking about, moving from that doing self to the being self. And so I invite you now, wherever you are sitting or lying, being, to simply begin to bring your awareness to your body, to this present moment, to yourself that is sitting here, that is breathing, that is practicing being. Allow your breath to be slow and deep, bringing that nourishing breath of life into the body and seeing it reach every cell. And with that exhale, releasing, letting go. And again, breathing in peace and stillness, calmness. And breathing out, releasing worldly concerns, material distractions. And one more time, breathing in, saying to yourself, God is here. In this moment of stillness, God is here. And exhaling, letting go. I am home. Keep this practice real simple today. It's just breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, I breathe in the peace of God. Breathing out, I relax and let go. Breathing in, I'm sitting at the Lord's feet. Breathing out, I am still and at peace. Continuing to just relax your body as you are mindful, aware of each inhalation and each exhalation. Now I invite you to bring your awareness to that heart space. And bring that breath, that awareness of the breath to your heart. So that you're now breathing into the heart. And breathing out from the heart. Bringing all of your awareness to that heart space as we activate that wisdom of that love center. Again, breathing into the heart and breathing out. And as you allow that heart space to become activated, feel that heart energy just moving throughout your whole body, just blessing your body, blessing yourself, blessing every cell. And continuing to focus on that heart space, begin to encompass the mothers in your life. Your own mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, maybe your daughters, granddaughters, nieces, aunts, all of those mothers in your life. And allow them to be held in this loving space of that heart energy. And then seeing that expand out further to encompass mothers that you know around you in your life, your neighbors, friends, co-workers, mothers in the community. Again, holding them in that loving heart space. And finally, expand expanding that loving energy to all of the mothers all around the world. Human mothers, animal mothers, all those who mother, who nurture, who bring forth, who love and support and uplift. And finally extending that loving energy to surround our Mother Earth. This beautiful planet that supports us and sustains us. Surrounding her with that loving heart energy. And seeing all of these mothers uplifted, filled with loving energy, as they and we rest gently in that loving presence of God, sitting at the Lord's feet for a few moments in the silence. And so as we bring this time of contemplation and meditation to a close, we do so with a heart filled with gratitude for that loving divine aspect of God, always present, always available to us, to nurture, sustain, and uplift us. And for this we give thanks. And we say thank you, God.
Thank you, God. Thank you,
And
God.
so it is.
So it is.
Unity of Monterey Bay is the collective consciousness and commitment of all of us who give of our time, treasure, and talent in order to sustain the spiritual community that is dedicated to transforming lives. We know that prosperity is a state of mind that finds blessings in every situation, in abundance and joyous generosity. We transform all appearance of fear or lack into a faith-filled peace of mind by shifting our attention to thoughts of gratitude for the abundance of God's good in our lives. And with our hearts and minds overflowing with gratitude, we breathe into the divine flow of God's good, trusting that we are enough, that we have enough, and that there always is enough to both have and to share. And again, we are grateful for all of you, for your online giving through our website at unityofmontereybay.org and through your mailed-in offerings, including those who have set up automatic payments giving with your banking institutions. We are truly blessed. And now, from this place of faith and gratitude, I invite you to join me in our mindful intention in joining in our offertory blessing.
I am an open channel for God's infinite good. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies everything I give and everything I receive. I am both blessed and a blessing. Thank you, God.
Well, if it's been your first time with us today, we would like to welcome you to our Unity of Monterey Bay community and let you know that we are grateful that we've had this opportunity to connect with you and to connect with all of our Unity community and friends, both locally and all over the place. And we just hope that you feel at home here and that you experience this as a place that loves you and accepts you wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Our unityofmontereybay.org website has a prayer request link, which you are invited to use. Our chaplains are meeting weekly on Zoom, holding that high watch for our community, holding our community in prayer, and chaplains are available to respond to you via email or messaging if you leave us your information. And Reverend Vicky and myself are both available by email, as noted in our shout-out. Always like to remind you that Silent Unity is available 24 hours a day. You can call them toll-free from anywhere in the world, or email them, or use their app, and someone will stop right there and pray with you. So always like to remind folks, sometimes I even forget myself that service is available through Silent Unity. So we will be having our virtual coffee time and community fellowshipping time on Zoom. We're going to begin about 11:15, and so grab your coffee and snacks, and we will see you on Zoom. And so now let's just close this sacred time of communion and worship in prayer. Mother, Father, God, Great Spirit, Divine Mind, we are grateful for this time together this morning, to come together and to remind ourselves and one another that there is need of only one thing, that our spiritual practice is the most important thing in our lives. And so we are grateful for this community that supports us in remembering that. And we hold everyone in our beloved community this morning, especially the mothers, We honor them. We hold them in that space of love. We see them uplifted. We see them well, happy, and at peace. And for this we are grateful. Thank you, God. Now would you please join me for our prayer for protection and our peace song, and just keep envisioning that circle that we have every week. We're holding it here for you, but we know that soon we will be back together. Literally, well, I don't know if we'll be holding each other's hands right away. We might have to continue this for a while, but we will be together again, and we know that that will happen soon. So just, again, holding our Mother Earth and mothers all around the world in our hearts as we join in our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. All of you, and happy Mother's Day from Unity of Monterey Bay.